Welcome back. Now, Dublin is one of Europe's most down-to-earth and friendly cities. That's according to Lonely Planet, which announced the capital as one of the world's top 10 cities to visit in 2022. But with rising rents and the cost of living, how attractive is Dublin City to those who live here? Well, here to discuss is the editor of Air and Travel magazine, Eoghan Corry, former Lord Mayor of Dublin, Councillor Hazel Chu, and via Skype, Lonely Planet editor Tom Hall. And I want to come to you, Tom. There may have been a few raised eyebrows here when we saw we made it to the top 10, Dublin City at least. But tell us from Lonely Planet's point of view, what makes Dublin so special?
So this is Lonely Planet's Best in Travel guide. It's our annual celebration of the best places to visit for the coming year. So we're thinking about 2022 in this case. We actually showcase maybe a different side to Dublin than what a lot of visitors would normally see. So we talk about a real sense of dynamism in the city. We herald its green projects like its bike hire schemes and encourage people to get out and do some sea swimming, which is maybe a very different take on the city than people might think about.
Just in terms of how you select your top 10, what sort of criteria are you looking for there, Tom?
Well, with Best in Travel, it's really the pooled wisdom of Lonely Planet's travel experts who, in normal years, are going around the world visiting as many places as we possibly can. There's a nomination process which is then voted on by a short list of people who who don't work for Lonely Planet but are working in the travel industry. So we hope gives us an extra sort of sense of verification. And the idea is that it's a global list, so it's intended to appeal to people from the world over. Dublin's obviously a very popular city anyway, but we're pleased to shine a little bit of a different light on it today.
Yeah, so we're number 7 now. If we wanted to move up there and become number 1, what does Dublin need to do?
Oh, what a good question. I've known that Dublin's going to be in the list for a while, and I was lucky enough to come to Dublin myself over the summer. And I actually think it's just a case of time passing and people maybe re-engaging a bit. We've had the last couple of years where people haven't really been able to travel. Dublin actually felt quite different on my last visit without large numbers of tourists from the rest of the world. And I think one of the things is how the city responds to people coming back and deals with maybe some of the challenges that it's had in the past, with lots of visitors coming into the city centre and maybe, causing some problems for people who do live there.
Okay, Tom Hall of Lonely Planet, thank you so much for joining us there with your insight into how Dublin made it into the top 10. We appreciate that tonight. I'm coming back to my panel now and, just to ask you about the bigger picture here and what it means for Dublin to be on a guide such as the Lonely Planet. How important is it, do you think, for tourism?
Really important, and Lonely Planet has been very kind to Ireland over the years. We've got Ireland has been in the list, Cork has been on the list, Cliffs of Moher have been on the list. Generally, we get there or thereabouts. Thanks to that selection process that Tom talked about, and people like Tom have been huge supporters of Ireland down the years. It's a small group of people who decide this. It's slightly random in that, what tends to trend, they will read top 10 lists, they'll pick up top 10 lists. It's also English language, because Lonely Planet is hugely influential, among English speakers worldwide. It's obviously co-founded by an Irish woman, Maureen Wheeler. If this was in Madrid, where the top 10 list would probably be Colombia, Peru, places like that. But it's hugely influential in the two key markets for us. Our biggest market by far, Britain, and America, our second biggest market. So it's not really whether we come number 1 or number 7, because sometimes it is a little bit random. It's a small group of people, but the fact you're in the list is the key to everything. And as long as we keep getting our key attractions into that list, that's very, very important for our marketing.
As a former Lord Mayor of the capital, Hazel Chu, when you saw Dublin number 7 there, were you surprised to see it?
I was surprised, but I was really proud. It's a great news story. It's great to be on that list, and it's great to have Dublin on the map. But I think while we're celebrating that, we shouldn't forget the other positions we're on global lists at the moment, or the other figures. 7 on this list, were 7% increase in rent for the first time since 2019 for this for this quarter in the year. We're also 10th on vacant sites globally at the moment. So while we're thinking of the celebrations of the list in terms of tourism, we need to think of the balance that has in terms of housing, in terms of whether we're housing people properly in the city, whether we have enough housing, and also what are we going to do in terms of culture as well, balancing culture, because we've had news stories in the last couple of weeks in terms of the cobblestone, today with the Science Gallery, previously with Bernard Shaw. If we're getting all the tourists over here, what are we going to be showing them is another thing. So we need to make sure, first and foremost, we don't drive rent increases to further. And the second thing is a balance of culture.
Yeah, and just on that, like cities needing to have a unique selling point. If you're going to see, you know, famous landmark pubs and things like what we're hearing today about the Science Gallery, you know, fading away from that big picture, and then all these images coming in about expensive hotels, it being a costly place to visit, that does damage to our ranking in terms of a place you want to visit, doesn't it?
We can obsess about that a lot, but let's face it, our competitors are Northern Europe. Our competitors aren't the cheapest cities in the world. Our competitors are the Parises and Londons and Berlins and places where prices aren't that hugely different for the tourist. What this is probably showing up, and what Tom's comments show up, Dublin has had to reorient its tourism from what it was, which was classic hangover tourism. It was the great place to come and party, big crowds, Temple Bar. COVID has made that impossible in the short term to come back to. So what Hazel's policies have been doing, separated cycleways, where you can actually bring a cycle tour through the streets of Dublin now, and you see them multiplying and increasing. The swimming in the sea that Tom has got. Dublin's location, the mountains, the sea, the bay, almost like the Bay of Naples, all of the things that we take for granted are what someone looking in from outside will see as something to celebrate as a tourist. And, while the whole Temple Bar hangover experience is probably, got to be parked in the short term as a tourist attraction to Dublin, it's served us really, really well. There's an awful lot else we can be doing.
Absolutely. No, totally agree with Eoghan on that.
Temple Bar hangover culture, tell us about that. What do you make of that, Hazel?
I think we've all experienced it
the hangover in Temple Bar?
In some way, shape or form. And I think, as Eoghan pointed to, there's a point here where we can reimagine tourism for our city. And I think by Lonely Planet putting us on this list gives us this opportunity to look at tourism differently. What way are we going to celebrate culture? It's not going to be, hopefully, hangover culture and just stags and hens. And that's no offence to the stags and hen parties coming over. But there's a lot more in our history that we have to offer in terms of also going out, nightlife. Clubbing is culture. We need to relook at that.
Yeah, and it's not just a challenge for Dublin, but it is nationally, isn't it, to get us back to where we were pre-pandemic. How can we do that, Eoghan?
Less a challenge nationally, and I'll tell you why. If you look at the imagery across America and across the world of Ireland, it's a lot of high cliffs, mountains, clouds. It's exactly what the post-COVID tourism experience is. The wind blowing through your hair, far away, distance, self-catering accommodation, small house. So while Dublin has a slightly different tourism product that served us terrifically well in Britain, it also can offer that because the mountains are so close. We sometimes forget that within County Dublin, you have those bike trails in Glencullen and places like that. So while you can come do your city experience, and our second biggest attraction in the country pre-COVID was the Cliffs of Moher. The number one attraction was the Guinness Storehouse, 1.7 million a year. That sort of big bang branded. There's only Hershey in America and one of the German car companies that can offer as big a branded experience that had the numbers that Guinness delivered. They're the huge contributions Dublin made nationally to tourism, and it can continue to do that. But in the meantime, post-COVID, the crowded street, the crowded pub culture, it's got to be put on the back burner.
Okay, well, there we'll have to leave it. My thanks to Tom, who joined us, Eoghan and Hazel, who are on the panel tonight.